Why do most relationships fail? The myth of the magical other.in the tapestry of human experience. Few threads are as vibrant and complex as those of romantic relationships. We weave our dreams, hopes, and desires into these connections, often with the expectation that they will fulfill us completely. Yet, as we stand at the precipice of understanding why most relationships fail, we must confront a profound truth: the myth of the magical other. This myth, deeply ingrained in our collective psyche, tells us that somewhere out there exists a perfect partner who will complete us, heal our wounds, and provide unending happiness. It's a seductive notion, one that has been reinforced through countless stories, songs, and cultural narratives. But what if this very belief is the poison that corrupts the well of love? We must ask ourselves, why do we cling so desperately to this idea? Perhaps it's because the alternative, the recognition of our fundamental aloneness, is too terrifying to contemplate. We yearn for a savior, a soulmate who will rescue us from the existential angst that haunts our quietest moments. But let's pause for a moment and consider the weight of this expectation. How can any single individual possibly bear the burden of being another's everything? It's an impossible standard, one that sets the stage for inevitable disappointment and resentment. The myth of the magical other is not just a harmless fantasy, it's a destructive force that undermines the very foundations of healthy relationships. When we believe that our partner should complete us, we abdicate responsibility for our own growth and happiness. We become passive recipients, waiting for love to transform our lives, rather than active participants in our own journey of self-discovery. This myth also blinds us to the reality of human imperfection. In the early stages of a relationship, we often project our ideals onto our partner, seeing them not as they truly are, but as we wish them to be. When the honeymoon phase fades and reality sets in, we're left grappling with the disparity between our fantasy and the flesh and blood person before us. But what if we could see beyond this illusion? What if we could embrace the truth that no one person can be our everything, and that this is not a tragedy but a liberation? Imagine a world where we enter relationships not to be completed, but to share our already whole selves with another. A world where we recognize that the purpose of a partnership is not to fulfill all our needs, but to support each other as we navigate the complexities of life. This shift in perspective requires courage. It demands that we face our own incompleteness, our own wounds, and take responsibility for our healing. It asks us to do the hard work of self-love and self-discovery, rather than outsourcing our happiness to another. As we embark on this journey of understanding, let us ask ourselves, what unmet needs am I trying to fulfill through my relationships? How can I begin to meet these needs myself? What would it look like to love another not from a place of lack, but from a place of wholeness? The path to authentic love is not easy, but it is infinitely rewarding. It begins with the recognition that the most important relationship we will ever have is the one we have with ourselves. Only when we cultivate self-love and self-acceptance can we truly open our hearts to another without the burden of unrealistic expectations. In the words of the psychiatrist M. Scott Peck, the myth of romantic love is a dreadful lie. But in unmasking this lie, we open the door to a deeper, more meaningful connection, one based on mutual growth, respect, and the celebration of each other's individuality. As we continue our exploration, remember the journey to true love begins within. Are you ready to take the first step? The crucible of self-forging wholeness in the fires of solitude. As we delve deeper into the labyrinth of human relationships, we encounter a paradox that lies at the heart of our quest for connection. To truly love another, we must first learn to be alone. This truth, often obscured by the clamor of our culture's obsession with coupling, is the key to unlocking the door to genuine, sustainable love. We live in a society that often equates being alone with loneliness, solitude with failure. From a young age, we're bombarded with messages that suggest our worth is tied to our relationship status. But what if this collective fear of aloneness is precisely what sabotages our capacity for deep, meaningful connections? Consider for a moment the vast difference between being alone and being lonely. Loneliness is a painful state of perceived isolation, a yearning for connection that goes unfulfilled. Being alone, on the other hand, can be a powerful act of self-discovery and growth. It's in the quiet moments of solitude that we often hear the whispers of our true selves, unencumbered by the expectations and projections of others. The ability to be comfortably alone is not just a skill, it's an art form. It requires us to confront our deepest fears and insecurities, to sit with the discomfort of our own company without reaching for distractions or seeking refuge in the arms of another. This process can be terrifying, but it's also profoundly liberating. When we learn to be alone, we discover that we are enough. We realize that our worth doesn't depend on the validation of a partner or the status of being in a relationship. This self-sufficiency becomes the bedrock upon which healthy relationships can be built. For how can we truly appreciate the presence of another if we cannot appreciate our own company? The journey to self-sufficiency is not an easy one. It requires us to confront our shadows, to heal our wounds, and to take responsibility for our own happiness. It demands that we cultivate interests, passions, and a sense of purpose that exist independently of our romantic relationships. In doing so, we become whole individuals, capable of offering love from a place of abundance rather than need. Imagine entering a relationship not because you need someone to complete you, but because you want to share your completeness with another whole person. This shift in perspective transforms the dynamics of partnership. No longer are we seeking a savior or a cure for our existential loneliness. Instead, we're inviting another person to join us on our journey of growth and self-discovery. But how do we begin this process of self-cultivation? It starts with small acts of intentional solitude. Perhaps it's taking yourself on a date, learning a new skill, or simply sitting in quiet reflection. It's about developing a relationship with yourself that's as rich and nurturing as the one you hope to have with a partner. As you embark on this journey, ask yourself, what parts of myself have I been neglecting in the pursuit of relationship? What dreams and aspirations have I put on hold, waiting for the right person to come along? How can I start living a full, rich life right now, regardless of my relationship status? Remember, the goal is not to become so self-sufficient that we no longer need or want connection. Humans are inherently social creatures, and the desire for companionship is natural and beautiful. The aim is to approach relationships from a place of wholeness rather than lack. In cultivating this self-sufficiency, we also become more discerning in our choice of partners. We're less likely to settle for relationships that don't serve our highest good, less prone to staying in situations that diminish our spirit. We develop the strength to walk away from connections that don't align with our values, knowing that our happiness and fulfillment don't depend on the presence of another. This journey of self-discovery and self-love is ongoing. It doesn't end when we enter a relationship, rather, it continues to evolve and deepen. In fact, a healthy partnership can be a powerful catalyst for personal growth, challenging us to confront our limitations and expand our capacity for love and understanding. As we learn to embrace solitude, we paradoxically become more capable of deep connection. We bring to our relationships a sense of groundedness, a clarity of purpose, and a fullness of being that enriches the bond we share with another. We love not out of desperation or fear of being alone, but out of a genuine desire to share our lives with someone who complements our wholeness. In the words of the poet Rainer Maria Rilke, the highest task of a bond between two people is that each should stand guard over the solitude of the other. This profound insight speaks to the essence of mature love, a love that respects individuality, encourages growth, and honors the sacred space of aloneness that exists within each of us. As we continue our exploration, let us embrace the transformative power of solitude. Let us recognize that the path to authentic love begins with self-love, and that our capacity to be alone is not a weakness to be overcome, but a strength to be cultivated. For it is only when we are truly at peace with ourselves that we can offer the gift of our presence to another without the burden of expectation or need. Are you ready to embark on this journey of self-discovery? To dive deep into the waters of your own being and emerge stronger, more whole, and more capable of love than ever before. The adventure awaits, and it begins with a single step into the embrace of your own company. The alchemy of authentic connection, transforming expectation into appreciation. In the crucible of human relationships, we often find ourselves trapped by the very expectations that we believed would lead us to happiness. These expectations, born from the myth of the magical other, can become invisible chains that bind us, preventing the flourishing of true intimacy and connection. But what if we could transmute these expectations into something far more precious and powerful? The alchemical process of turning lead into gold serves as a potent metaphor for the transformation we must undergo in our approach to love and partnership. Just as the alchemists sought to purify base metals, we too must purify our intentions and perceptions in relationships. Let us begin by examining the nature of expectation itself. When we expect our partner to fulfill all our needs, to always understand us, to never disappoint us, we set the stage for inevitable disillusionment. These expectations are the lead of relationships, heavy, burdensome, and ultimately toxic. But what if we could transform this lead into gold? The gold, in this case, is appreciation, a state of being that allows us to see our partners clearly, to value them for who they are rather than who we wish them to be. This transformation requires a radical shift in perspective. Instead of focusing on what we can get from a relationship, we must learn to appreciate what is already there. It's about cultivating gratitude for the unique qualities our partner brings to our life, even and especially when they differ from our idealized vision. Consider for a moment, how often do we take our partners for granted? How frequently do we focus on their shortcomings rather than their strengths? What if we could train ourselves to notice and appreciate the small acts of kindness, the quirks that make them uniquely themselves, the ways in which they challenge us to grow? This shift from expectation to appreciation is not easy. It requires constant vigilance and practice. We must catch ourselves in the act of expecting and consciously choose to appreciate instead. It's a moment-by-moment decision to see the beauty in what is rather than lamenting what isn't. As we engage in this alchemical process, we begin to notice a profound change in our relationships. The pressure eases, the resentment dissipates. In its place, a new kind of love emerges, one that is rooted in reality rather than fantasy, in acceptance rather than demand. This doesn't mean we abandon all standards or stay in relationships that are genuinely unfulfilling. Rather, it means we approach our partnerships with clear eyes and open hearts. We recognize that our partners are on their own journey of growth and self-discovery, just as we are. We learn to support each other's evolution, rather than demanding stagnation for the sake of our comfort. The alchemy of authentic connection also involves transmuting our fears into courage. The courage to be vulnerable, to communicate honestly, to face conflicts head-on rather than sweeping them under the rug. It's the courage to look at ourselves unflinchingly and take responsibility for our own happiness and growth. As we practice this alchemy, we may find that our relationships become more fluid, more dynamic. We create space for both closeness and individuality, recognizing that true intimacy paradoxically requires a degree of separateness. We learn to dance between connection and autonomy, finding joy in the rhythmic ebb and flow of togetherness and solitude. In this alchemical process, we discover that the real magic in relationships doesn't come from finding a perfect other, but from the continuous co-creation of love through presence, appreciation, and mutual growth. We realize that love is not a static state to be achieved, but a living, breathing entity that requires constant nurturing and attention. As we conclude this exploration, let us ask ourselves, how can I begin to practice the alchemy of appreciation in my relationships today? What expectations am I holding that I could transform into gratitude? How might my connections change if I approach them with wonder and curiosity rather than demand and presumption? The journey of love is ongoing, ever evolving. By embracing the alchemy of authentic connection, we open ourselves to a love that is both grounded in reality and touched by the magic of genuine appreciation. This is the gold we seek, a love that enriches our lives, challenges us to grow, and celebrates the beautiful imperfection of being human. The phoenix of partnership rising from the ashes of failed expectations. In the crucible of failed relationships and shattered expectations, we often find ourselves standing amidst the ashes of what we once believed love to be. It is here, in this place of apparent desolation, that the true potential for transformative love emerges. Like the mythical phoenix, we have the opportunity to rise anew, wiser and more capable of authentic connection than ever before. The journey of rising from these ashes begins with acceptance. We must accept that relationships, like life itself, are inherently imperfect. They are messy, challenging, and at times heartbreaking. But it is precisely in this imperfection that their beauty lies. When we embrace the reality of human relationships with all their flaws and limitations, we open ourselves to a love that is far richer and more meaningful than any idealized fantasy. As we rise, we learn to redefine success in relationships. Success is not the absence of conflict or the fulfillment of all our desires. Rather, it is the ability to navigate challenges together, to grow both individually and as a couple, and to continually choose each other amidst life's ever-changing landscape. It's about creating a partnership that is resilient, flexible, and deeply rooted in mutual respect and understanding. In this rebirth, we discover that the most profound intimacy often emerges from our willingness to be vulnerable. It's in sharing our fears, our insecurities, and our deepest truths that we create the foundation for genuine connection. We learn that true strength in a relationship comes not from presenting a perfect facade, but from having the courage to be authentically ourselves. As the phoenix of partnership rises, we also come to understand the vital importance of individual growth. Paradoxically, the strongest relationships are often those where both partners have a strong sense of self and a commitment to their own personal development. We learn to support each other's evolution, recognizing that as we grow individually, we bring more to our shared journey. In this new paradigm of love, we shift from seeking completion to celebrating complementarity. We recognize that our partners are not here to fill our voids or heal our wounds. That is our own sacred work. Instead, we appreciate the unique gifts and perspectives they bring to our lives, understanding that our differences can be a source of strength and mutual enrichment rather than conflict. The risen phoenix of partnership is characterized by a deep sense of friendship and companionship. We learn to be not just lovers, but true allies in life. We face challenges together, celebrate each other's successes, and provide a safe harbor in times of storm. This friendship forms the bedrock of lasting love, sustaining us through the inevitable ups and downs of life. As we embrace this new understanding of love and partnership, we find that our relationships become more joyful, more authentic, and more fulfilling. We no longer burden them with unrealistic expectations or the weight of our unfulfilled needs. Instead, we approach each day with gratitude, curiosity, and a commitment to nurturing the unique bond we share. In conclusion, let us ask ourselves, how can I embody the spirit of the phoenix in my relationships? What old beliefs and patterns am I ready to let go of? How can I rise anew, bringing wisdom, compassion, and authenticity to my connections? Remember, every ending is also a beginning. From the ashes of failed relationships and shattered myths, we have the opportunity to create something truly beautiful, a love that is grounded in reality, nourished by mutual growth, and illuminated by the light of genuine understanding. This is the promise of the phoenix of partnership, a love that continually renews itself, rising ever stronger from the challenges we face together.